So I'd like to start by asking you guys to, tell your story. Tell a little about yourself, what inspired you to get started, what inspired you to be part of the entrepreneurial journey?
I think I've always been interested in business, and I think I've always realized that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And I think at some point in my career, I was an engineer, and I just saw this big gap between what my aspirations and where I was. And so I basically decided at that point that I wanted to do something more. And then an opportunity came along that just combined everything that interests me into one project. It just happens to have the balance of business and something to do with education and promoting people and helping people. And so that's what got me inspired.
Thank you. Nikhil?
Awesome. Just take this down for a second. Oh, I can't. Hi, guys. My name's Nikhil. I am 21 years old. I'm a senior at UC Berkeley. Is anyone from Cal, or does anyone want to go there, or whatever? It doesn't matter. But a long story short, I'm a senior studying electrical engineering and computer science. After graduation, I'll be moving down to SoCal to be an engineer at a startup. Prior to that, I was an intern at Tesla Motors for the last 3 years, which was amazing. And then beyond that, I guess the reason I'm here to talk to you all is because of something I do on the side. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about personal growth and education and any sort of philosophy that interests me. I've also converted that into a small little business endeavor where I sell journals and design my own clothes and everything of the sort. And I'm super excited to chat with all of you. It looks like there's a ton of young kids in the room, so I'm very, very happy that you all are here. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikhil. Hi guys, I'm Sachin. I'm the founder at HackerEarth. I recently moved to the US 4 months back. Prior to that, I've been building HackerEarth in India for the last 6 years. Graduated from IIT and then started doing HackerEarth just out of college. Worked at Google for a very short duration. So been at it for 6 years. And I want to call out one thing, that I was in a similar room 7-8 years back in my school on the other side, and that's one of the reasons I'm here today. Somebody said something about entrepreneurship, bit me, and then rest is history. So you're privileged to be here listening to all of us. If there's anything that you can go back with is one message that I want to start with in the beginning itself, that anything is possible. You got to believe in that. So yeah, that's about my, how I came to be here. We'll talk about interesting things in the panel.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sharon Mizuki. I'm the CEO and founder of TechyKids.com. And so my story is, I actually had a very strong interest in art, but my mom said, get a degree you can use. So I went into mechanical engineering, and I learned a heck of a lot in mechanical engineering. And then when I got into industry, I was bored. I was bored. I had gone from working at Toyota as an intern, and it was really interesting. I worked in the stamping department, and I really loved it. It was a lot of work, and then I started doing an office job, and I thought a robot or a monkey could do my job. It was very repetitive. I didn't have the social, the creativity, the stuff that I really wanted. So I decided I needed to make a change. And so I had quit my job in Pennsylvania, and I was one of the only young female engineers. And so when I got there, they asked me if I knew how to use a Xerox machine. And I realized that, there's kind of an issue here with just accepting women and culture and understanding, I'm not here to, Xerox, I've got a brain. So when I asked questions, they said, well, you ask a lot of questions, you just should do what you're told. And I wanted a different way. And so I moved out to California, and I decided to explore many different options, because what I realized in school, you're exposed to, math, science, but I didn't even know what an engineer was. So when my mom said, get an engineering degree, I didn't know what an engineering degree was. But when I went into engineering, I learned about 3D modeling, I learned how to think. And I thought learning how to think and problem solve and get your ideas out there and the whole entrepreneurship was the most intriguing things. I had a 4th grade teacher who was big on entrepreneurship. And that resonated with me. She allowed us to do project-based learning. And so I ended up coming out to California, and I fell into, my mom was a daycare provider, so I started combining my engineering degree with my passion. And then I decided, well, it would be really great if I want a career that takes my passion and my degree and puts them to use. Wouldn't it be great if I could do the same thing and educate kids to do that? So I did things like ran an after-school program teaching kids robotics and creativity, doing entrepreneurship, letting them think with original thought while learning useful skills, and then went from there to bringing a robot to the Tech Museum, and then I became a classroom teacher, and then brought TechyKids to life, where I developed a program to teach kids how to learn this subject matter. And so that's what TechyKids became.
Thank you so much. So we all know that, when you go into an entrepreneurship process, obviously when you get the first product or the first service delivered, it is a moment of, happiness. We feel good that we got the product delivered. But there's always more to that story. So what was it like for you guys? What was the thought that you guys had? And what was the plan that you guys had put in after, the first product or first service you guys had was delivered, the first step was taken?
I'll go? Okay. So for us, when we first delivered our product, this was almost like 5 years back, obviously it was a moment of joy, but at the same time it was a moment of extreme sadness, and there's an interesting story behind this. So we had got this customer after chasing them for almost a year, more than a year, and I still remember there were 5 of us sitting around on a table working day in and day out for the last 3 days when the customer was supposed to use the product. Obviously, we'd put in everything at that point of time, and comes the moment and the product didn't work. And we were frantically trying to make it work as the customer was trying to use it, but it just didn't work. And that was not just 3 days of nonstop effort, but probably a year and a half of slogging that just went down the dumps. And that was a moment when, I think it was a pivotal moment for us in our journey because after putting in so much, so the context is I was at Google and I had, a fairly plush job back in India, which I'd quit to start HackerEarth and, spent a year and a half. And when the moment of truth comes, you fail. And then you start thinking, is it really worth it? I think if we had quit, obviously we would not have been here. So it was both a moment of, as I said, joy, but also a moment of pain. And that's one of the things that, we've experienced over the last 6-7 years, that entrepreneurship is not easy. Nothing in life worth having is easy, right? So, and it comes with a lot of pain, but I think that's the fun of it, that literally falling and then trying to get back up and then crawl and then running again. That's where the whole fun is. So that's how our first moment was. Happy to hear from others.
Yeah, I'll speak on that as well. We launched our product about a year ago, and the experience was incredibly anticlimactic. We had worked so hard up until that point. I personally had moved my family like 7 times, lived with different family members, and it was really hard to get to that point. There were a lot of work. I mean, a lot of joy also, a lot of excitement. And at that point, we had amassed a great support system, a really good community that really supported what we were doing, that really liked what we were doing. And it just so happened that by the time we launched, we had already also learned that what we're doing is a little bit pushing a boundary. And so we knew that was our starting point. That was where we were just beginning. We knew it wasn't going to be overnight something great, and that we would have to really work hard and market and also prove the concept. So we had a product, minimal viable product, something that you have probably heard of before, but it's just one thing for people to support the idea, but another for people to actually use it. So that was one thing, and then the other, I would say, is we were also very embarrassed by that product, and still, I still feel somewhat embarrassed when I show it. Luckily, we've been able to improve it over the last year, but after that experience, I heard a lot, you should be embarrassed by your first product. And looking back at how we've used our time, I think that it makes sense for you to be embarrassed by your first project unless you have somebody in marketing on your team. You're not going to look like Apple on day one. If you focus on the value that you're creating and what you're basically proving that you have a product market fit and cultivating those relationships, I think those are the most important things you can be doing. So,
Thank you so much, Aelisa. So anyone else would like to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to speak briefly about what you said about creating value in someone's life. I think that's by far the most important thing. I also think there's a tremendous misconception to being entrepreneurial sometimes. I think people say you have to be in your mid-20s and then you have to take this risk and then you have to go do this, and that, and it's fairly mechanical. And I sometimes disagree. I sometimes think that regardless if you're 15, 16, 17, if you're in high school or college, all it takes is one step to just try and create something, try and work at something by yourself, maybe get a little bit better at a craft that you may have, and take a risk monetizing it. I guess in my own experience, I was making YouTube videos since I was in high school, since like 14 or 15, and I pivoted. Once I got to college, I realized that there were deeper problems that I wanted to discuss with people and share, and then they started becoming popular, and then I was like, okay, how can I take this value that I've somehow created in someone's life and turn it into a side business, a way to make money? And that was when I was 19 and 20 years old. I had an idea to make a journal and design clothes for people. And I talked to my dad, who's here actually. He's one of my biggest heroes. He's like, I also encourage you to find mentors and stuff, because if you can't have a mentor, then sometimes I think you'll be lost. But I talked to my dad about this, and I was like, Dad, how do we move forward? So he said, why not do this all by yourself and find a supplier, get a design, and then use all the money you made from your internship, put it into paying for journals, and then start selling them. So then out of my website, I started selling stuff, and things became successful. And so I would just say to you that take the risk that you've been having in your head, take the risk that you've been kind of plotting for yourself, and see where it goes, and accept that failure is part of the formula. But eventually you'll have something that kind of just works. And I hope it creates value in people's lives.
And I would love to add on to that. So when you launch your product, it is like testing out your giant hypothesis that you have worked so hard on. You have a hypothesis that if I create it, it will work. But it takes a lot of work to even get to that point. And it is a huge milestone, and you're like ramping up to it, but it's just one step at the same time. It's such a huge step just to get to that point where you get a product that you can actually test with people, and it works. Two of my milestones for what I had done was, I'm very good at teaching very hard concepts like robotics to kindergartners and first graders and things that people with engineering degrees have. And so my hypothesis was if I can make amazing, have my students invent, can I get someone else in someone else's classroom to have that experience where they're staying in during recess, they don't want to leave their classrooms. And so when I had another teacher in Pennsylvania using the TechyKids system, and I saw the joy in those kids' faces, and the creations that they had done, and know that I was able to get the same sort of repeatable results that was in my classroom in another classroom, I was ecstatic, because that was, aha, it's possible, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other big aha was I had a hypothesis of, I could get people from all ages in one room, multiple skill levels, interested in different things, all engaged in the same classroom using my system, and they could all learn at their own pace, their own skill level, create original things, and I was able to create that as well. And so when you work, and I'm talking about years and years of working to that point, and to finally get that is yes. And as an entrepreneur, right, sure, you might have milestones, we need this many sales, this and that, but as a founder and a passionate founder at that, when that hypothesis, that theory, that's often just accumulation of all the things that you just feel, and we're all in education things, those are the biggest, I had this theory and it comes from something that I'm passionate about, and will it work? And when it does, it proves something a little bit larger.
Thank you so much. So as we saw, this process of having the first product is just the first step. There's a lot more that goes behind it, and there's a lot more that you have to do. So I had to ask you, what are some challenges and struggles you guys had to go through? Because we all know that entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster ride. There's always has its ups, it always has its downs, it always has its turnings. So, its bumps. So maybe you want to explain about some of the challenges you guys tackled or some of the struggles you guys had, some of the barriers you had to break.
I'll let you guys go first.
I'll go first. So obviously, plethora of challenges over the years. The first thing that you as an entrepreneur have to be comfortable with is failure. Overnight success is a myth. There cannot be anything falser, if that's even a term, than that. Nobody becomes successful just by overnight. It takes a lot of effort, and more importantly, it takes a lot of failure. So you fail multiple times before you finally succeed. So that's one. You have to be comfortable with failure. The second is you will change a lot. You'll pivot a lot. What you start with, you rarely end up with the same thing. So you need to be able to change, and those are things that that will be uncomfortable in the beginning to you. But then you have to get used to the fact that things will change, things will evolve, and you have to constantly adapt yourself to that change. The other, I would say, is people. It's very important that you have a team, a group of people around you who you can talk to, who you can share this with, because it's not easy. And if you're just focused on the end outcome, what's going to come at the end, then you're not enjoying the journey. And that's what entrepreneurship is about. I don't think it's about the outcome. It's never about the outcome. It's the journey. It's the process. So if you get used to enjoying that, that's when it becomes really fun.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add on to that?
I would like to add on. I want to second what Nikhil said about having a good team and working with people that I think it's important that you like each other. That's really critical, and that you also balance each other in some way. If you both have the same strengths, like that could be challenging. I think it's helpful if you each have different strengths that kind of balance you. And yeah, I would also second that you have to be persistent and accept that no is going to be a lot of what you face out there. I think for us, like we got a lot of excitement, a lot of people interested in what we're doing, a lot of people saying, yes, we really need that. But along the way, even despite that, we've had a fair share of no's, and we've cultivated relationships with people and have been working on getting support from some certain entities for 3 years, and we get that no, and it's very discouraging. At the same time, you have to also celebrate your wins. So anything that happens along the way that's good, you have to stop and celebrate it, because you know that tomorrow there will be another low. So
thank you.
I agree. I think my only point on this is that what's weird is I think that human beings are critical by nature. We often look at the idea of someone else, or if they come to you and say, I'm working on something new, what do you think? I think our instinct is to look at all of the negatives in it. We kind of point holes and be like, oh, well, this needs to change. You should revise this platform. You should make this part better. And that's just sort of who we are as people. And I think learning to reel that instinct in when you are the creator, when you are someone that's bringing something to life, and still work really, really hard at it, even though people around you are like, oh, well, actually, this isn't the way forward, or this isn't how things are supposed to be done. This isn't how we've done it in the past. Learning to ignore that I mean, it's good advice, it's good intentioned advice, but I think sometimes being ignorant of it can actually be very helpful for you.
And I would like to add something. He had mentioned that it's about the journey and not just about like the goal. And I really think that is important. Someone asked me once, what would you do if you won $1 million? And that really intrigued me, because we always think, I wish I won $1 million, but we don't actually think about then what happens. And you might think, I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, or I want to start a company, but it's about the journey. when you decide to be an entrepreneur, it is a lifestyle. Like, it is your day to day. There isn't like, you get this, now woohoo. It's like, it is a roller coaster, it's up and downs, it's part of your life, it's not just a, one thing. But you have to realize that it's a lifestyle. There are definitely ups and downs, like it becomes your child, your company. When people criticize it, it's like calling your baby ugly.
And you have to get used to that because that happens a lot.
So, you just have to, as you said, filter, have a thick skin. But, it's hard because you take something that is inside of you and you're putting it out there and you're releasing it to the world, and everyone has their own opinions of how it should be. And if sometimes you feel like, stress because you can't do it all, but you have to sometimes realize that you can't do it all. And you can't please everyone. So you build a product for a user group and you know who that user group is and you stay true to that. But yeah, entrepreneurship is definitely a roller coaster. Life is a roller coaster. And, and you might even want to consider, like, do you want a lifestyle business? Do you want to get VC funding? What do you want your life to be? Do you want to go into an office every day? Do you want to work from home? Do you want to be able to travel? So when you start a business, you also want to think what kind of a lifestyle you want to have, because you need to build that into what your company becomes.
Thank you so much. So basically we learned a lot today. The idea of being comfortable with failure, the idea of having a filter and a tough skin, the idea that, entrepreneurship and being a millionaire overnight is not possible. There's a lot of work that goes behind it, and personal growth. So if there's nothing you got out of this track, anything today, and there's one thing our panelists want to say to the audience, a quote, idea, concept, one thing that you wish someone had told you earlier that you want audience to take away from this track, what would that be?
I've actually got three things.
Go for it. Just do one.
It's really hard to filter down all the learnings into just one phrase. The first thing is be naive, and you guys have. It's not hard for you to do that. You're already naive, and that's it's a good thing. The fact that we are here today is because we were naive. If I was to start this today, knowing everything that I know today, it'll be a lot harder because I know what all can go wrong. But back in 2012, I didn't really know what could go wrong. I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't know how to build a product. I knew how to write code, but that's about it. Didn't know how to build an application, design nothing. So at times, knowing nothing, being naive is good. So be that. The second would be, and this is in hindsight, if somebody would have told us, people did tell us, but if it had if that message had gone home, would be focus. Pick one thing that you believe you can do, and just be at it. Continue doing that till you either solve it or you've failed. It's very easy to get distracted in between. You see a new problem, you start chasing it, or somebody comes up with something else, and you start aligning yourself to that. But focus is very, very, very important. The third thing, and again, this is not in hindsight, but yeah, we've realized it over the years, is fundraising. In this 60-mile radius, there's a lot of capital going around, and it's very easy to be enamored by that. But you've got to understand that VC money comes with a certain set of expectations. Like Sharon was saying, it's you could build a lifestyle business or you could build a VC business, and both of them are different. It's very important for you to understand the difference between the two, understand who you are, and then choose one of them. Both are right, both could be wrong. Really depends on the person, what you want to do. If you're going after VC-funded business, then you need to look at market sizes. You need to understand that it's someone else's money. At some point of time, you need to show them some exit, right? So it's a money business at the end of the day. So it's important to know who you are, and then pick your battles. So these are three things that I would want you guys to go away with.
Thank you so much, Sachin. Anyone would like to add some more?
Yeah, can you just, so what was the question one more time?
Just a piece of advice that you could give to somebody.
Oh, yeah. I would just like to say, and it's going to be for my own selfish reasons, but it's not just my own selfish reasons. We were actually talking about this before. Something we all have in common is that we're all about personal growth, education, improvement, like investing in people. And it also ties into what Rachel was saying, who just gave the talk before, about investing in our future youth. In the US, it seems like the closer you are to the money, the more money there is. But when you get to R&D and the youth and investing into the youth, unfortunately, we are currently divesting, which is a huge problem. Because if we don't invest in our youth, then, that is that is the future R&D. And so, when it comes time, like, why is it that we expect teachers to be essentially free? Teach for free, but pay for ads, right? So if we could shift how we spend our money, keep in mind that our money are voting dollars. This is how we vote in our country. And so if we could somehow shift the way we think about things, there will be more quality education, there'll be more quality in investing in our people, because our people is why we're here, this is why we're important. So one takeaway is just like, look at education. It's passion, but let it also be a future for people, because we're investing in ourselves rather than just investing in the stuff. So.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Very quick. Fundraising, on Nikhil's point also, so important. You can have a great idea, you have to get funded. So on day one, you should be thinking about, if you're not raising money on day one, you should be thinking about who might be interested in funding you, and start talking to those people, especially young women out there, because that's a special challenge, I think, for us is raising money, going out and asking people to fund you.
Yeah, I think, how many of you guys are in elementary, middle, or high school? Okay, so you're not dad, stop. A fair amount of you. And how many of you have parents that want you to become an engineer, lawyer, or doctor?
I think everyone.
A fair amount, yeah, it's okay. You don't have to raise your hand if your parent is sitting next to you. My only piece of advice is just to think a little differently. I think however young you are, we're kind of given a very singular approach to what it means to be successful. And I think in a very well-intentioned way, our parents want us to choose a career path that's safe, that's profitable. But I also think you can do that while having the insight and direction to do what you want. So read as many books as you possibly can, listen to as many people as you possibly can, like find a good mentor and find it as what you like to do, and then in conjunction with school, make your parents proud, become the engineer, the lawyer, the doctor that they all think you can be, but also pursue something else. Pick up a side hobby, find a craft that is irrelevant to your job or your occupation and get really good at it, and then who knows, maybe one day that passion will become your profession, and then your parents will become even more proud of you because you're making more money than being a lawyer or a doctor. So
think about what you want what you're doing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want some inspiration, Maker Faire is next weekend, which I really recommend because unfortunately it might actually be the last Maker Faire, but it's really inspiring to see projects. You'll see projects from kids, adults, projects that really inspire, and a combination of engineering, math, and so forth. So if you want to see what you might be interested in, come to Maker Faire next weekend, because it's a really cool thing that allows you to do and engage.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the great advice you guys have given us. And thank you so much for the audience for being a great audience today. Thank you.